Paris, March 1944. The city is a ghost of itself. It's a city of whispers and watchful eyes. Grand avenues that once celebrated life now stand in gray, muted silence. Swastikas hang like grotesque banners from historic buildings, a constant reminder of the shadow that has fallen over the city of light. Every day, the citizens of Paris navigate a world of fear. The rumble of military trucks on cobblestone streets, the sharp, guttural commands of occupying soldiers, the ever-present threat of the Gestapo, whose methods are as silent as they are brutal. People disappear. It's a simple, horrifying fact of life. Your neighbor, the one who always nodded politely, might not be there tomorrow. The baker with the kind eyes might be dragged from his shop in the dead of night. Some are taken for resisting, for being on the wrong side of the new order. Others vanish simply for who they are. They are swallowed by the machinery of war, becoming ghosts in their own city. But our story begins with a different kind of disappearance. It begins with a discovery so vile, so monstrous, that it would shock a city already numb to horror. It begins on a quiet, elegant street in the 16th arrondissement, number 21 Rue Le Sueur, a handsome, respectable townhouse, indistinguishable from its neighbors, a house that hid a secret hell. For days, the residents of Rue Le Sueur had noticed it, a foul, greasy smoke pouring from the chimney of number 21. It wasn't the normal smoke from a winter fire. This smoke was thick, black, and heavy, and it carried a smell so putrid it was almost indescribable. It was a sickeningly sweet stench of burning fat, of scorched hair, and something else beneath it all, something acrid and chemical. A smell that made you want to slam your windows shut, a smell that turned your stomach. At first, the neighbors tried to ignore it. In occupied Paris, you learned not to ask questions. You kept your head down. The owner of the house was a doctor, Marcel Petiot. A respectable man. Surely, there was a logical explanation. Perhaps a problem with his furnace. But the smoke continued, day after day, night after night, billowing into the sky. The stench grew worse, clinging to the curtains, seeping through the walls. It became unbearable. Finally, on the morning of March 11th, they couldn't take it anymore. Worried about a chimney fire that could engulf the whole block, they called the police. A single police officer on a bicycle, Constable Fernand Queru, was the first to arrive. He could smell it from a block away. He circled the house. It was silent, locked up tight. He knocked on the grand oak door. The sound echoed, but there was no answer. He shouted. Only silence replied. The smoke was now a dense, choking cloud. This was more than just a faulty furnace. Something was terribly wrong. He called for backup. Soon, more officers arrived. And then the fire brigade, the sapeurs-pompiers. The group of men stood on the pavement, staring up at the chimney, their faces a mixture of concern and disgust. The senior officer made the call. They had to go in. Imagine being one of those firemen. You're armed with a heavy axe. Your target is the solid, imposing front door. You swing and the wood splinters. You swing again, the sound of the impact shockingly loud on the quiet street. With a final groaning crack, the door gives way and you stumble into the darkness of the house. You brace yourself for a blast of heat, for the sight of flames. But there's nothing. The entrance hall is cold, dark, and eerily still. A thick layer of dust covers everything, suggesting the house hasn't been truly lived in for a long time. There's no fire here on the ground floor, but the smell. Inside, it's a physical presence. It's so thick you can taste it, and all the smoke seems to be coming from one place, downstairs, from the basement. With lanterns in hand, the police and firemen move cautiously through the silent house. Every creak of the floorboard seems to amplify the tension. They find the door to the cellar and pull it open. A wave of concentrated stench, a blast of foul heat, rushes up the stairs to meet them. It's the smell of a slaughterhouse, the smell of a charnel house. They descend the stone steps, handkerchiefs pressed to their faces. The air is thick with smoke. Visibility is low. At the bottom, they find the source, a large cast-iron coal stove roaring with heat. Its door is slightly ajar and flames lick out from the inside. This is the heart of the inferno, and next to it is a large pile of coal, ready to feed the fire. An officer moves his lantern to get a better look at the coal pile, and then he freezes. His breath catches in his throat. He raises a shaking hand and points. "Mon Dieu," he whispers. "My God." Sticking out from the pile of black coal is something pale, something hideously out of place. It's a human hand, charred and blackened, but unmistakably a hand. As their eyes adjust, they see more. A foot, pieces of a human torso, bones, fragments of flesh, all mixed in with the fuel for the fire, waiting to be destroyed. Their professional composure shatters. These are men who have seen the grim realities of war. They have seen death. But this is something else entirely. This isn't an act of war. This is systematic, methodical butchery. The senior police inspector, Commissaire Georges Victor Massou, takes charge, his face a grim mask. He orders a full search of the basement. What they uncover next pushes them from horror into a full-blown nightmare. In one corner, they find a deep pit dug into the earth floor. It's filled with a white caustic powder, quicklime, a substance used to accelerate the decomposition of organic matter, to dissolve flesh from bone, and protruding from the lime are more human remains. Legs, arms, heads, tangled together in a grotesque parody of a mass grave. How many bodies are there? 10, 20? It's impossible to tell. It's just a heap of human parts. Their search continues. They find a canvas sack, heavy and damp. Inside are more dissected body parts. They find a stable in the back, its floor stained with blood. Against a wall, stacked nearly to the ceiling, are suitcases, dozens and dozens of them. Expensive leather suitcases, filled with clothes, shoes, books, children's toys, family photographs. The entire worldly possessions of people who were clearly planning a long journey. People who ended their journey here, in this stinking basement. The police are overwhelmed. They are standing in a private, industrial-scale extermination facility, a factory of death, hidden behind the elegant facade of a Parisian townhouse. The questions are overwhelming. Who did this? Why? Who are the victims? Are they looking for a lone madman or a gang of killers? As the forensics teams begin their grisly work, and the commissaire tries to make sense of the madness, a man calmly rides up to the house on a bicycle. He is middle-aged, around 47, and impeccably dressed in a fine suit and hat. He looks intelligent, concerned. He parks his bicycle and approaches the officer standing guard at the broken door. "Excuse me," he says, his voice calm and steady. "What seems to be the trouble? This is my property." The officer stares at him, stunned into silence. This is him, the owner. Dr. Marcel Petiot, Commissaire Massou, is called over. He sizes up the doctor, this man who seems so utterly disconnected from the carnage in his basement. The questioning begins. "What is this place, doctor? What is the meaning of the bodies in your cellar?" Dr. Petiot doesn't flinch. He looks the commissaire directly in the eye, his expression one of serious confidence. He tells them he can explain everything. "But not out here on the street. It's a matter of national security," he says. "A secret of the resistance." He leans in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. He tells them a fantastic story. He claims to be the leader of a resistance network, a network dedicated to eliminating the enemies of France. The bodies in his basement, he says, are not innocent victims. They're Germans, Gestapo informants, French collaborators who betrayed their country. He is not a murderer, he insists. He is a patriot, a hero, carrying out righteous executions. The police are taken aback. The story is wild, outlandish. But this is occupied Paris. Stranger things have happened. The resistance does execute traitors. Could it possibly be true? The doctor is so calm, so convincing. He tells them he has documents to prove it all. A full report on every traitor he has executed. The papers are at his other apartment, he says. He just needs to go and retrieve them. He promises to return in 30 minutes. Commissaire Massou hesitates. His instincts scream that this man is a liar. But the story, in the context of the war, is just plausible enough to create a moment of doubt. And a moment is all Petiot needs. He thanks the commissaire for his understanding. He turns, gets back on his elegant bicycle, and with a polite nod, he rides away down the street. The police watch him go, expecting him to turn the corner and head for his other apartment. But he just keeps going, pedaling calmly until he melts into the gray chaos of the city. They wait. 30 minutes pass, an hour, 2 hours. He never comes back. The horrifying realization dawns on Commissaire Massu. He's been played. He just allowed the man responsible for the industrial-scale slaughter of dozens of people to simply get on his bicycle and ride away. The manhunt begins, but Petiot has vanished. The police are left with a house of horrors that defies imagination and a suspect who is a ghost. As they begin the monumental task of identifying the dismembered remains, they also begin to dig into the life of the respectable Dr. Petiot. They would soon learn that they were not hunting a soldier or a patriot. They were hunting a predator of unparalleled cunning and cruelty, a man the press would soon christen with a name that would echo in history. Dr. Satan? How does a monster live among us? Does he have a mark, a shadow that follows him? Or does he look just like everyone else? In the case of Marcel Petiot, the monster wore the most convincing disguise of all. The face of a friend, the crisp white coat of a healer. Before he was the infamous Dr. Satan, the butcher of Rue Le Sueur, he was simply Dr. Petiot. And to know him, or so people thought, was to trust him. To understand how he could operate for so long, we must first look at the meticulously crafted mask he presented to the world. He was born in 1897 in the quiet provincial town of Auxerre. From his earliest years, he was recognized as different. He was exceptionally bright, almost unnervingly intelligent. He excelled in his studies, absorbing information with an ease that amazed his teachers. But even in this early intelligence, there were signs of a deep-seated darkness, a profound disconnect from normal human emotion. As a boy, he was known for acts of casual cruelty. There were stories, the kinds of stories that small towns collect like secrets, of him torturing small animals. There were instances of unprovoked aggression, of a temper that could flare into disturbing violence without warning. At 11, he fired his father's pistol in a classroom. As a teenager, he was arrested for robbing a public postbox, but each time he escaped serious consequences. His intelligence was his shield. People would make excuses. He's just a boy, full of mischief. He is bored. His mind needs more stimulation. His charm was his weapon. He learned early how to manipulate the adults around him, how to feign remorse, how to present himself as a misunderstood prodigy. The darkness was there, but it was always explained away. Then in 1914, the world descended into the madness of the Great War. For a young man like Petiot, a teenager with a fractured psyche and a fascination with violence, the war was not a tragedy. It was a calling. He enlisted in the army as soon as he could. The trenches of World War I were a landscape of unimaginable horror, a place that broke even the strongest of men, but it didn't seem to break Petiot. If anything, he seemed to thrive in the chaos. His official military record is a bizarre tapestry of injury and insubordination. He was wounded by shrapnel. He was gassed. He was repeatedly sent away from the front lines not just for physical injuries, but for his mental state. He was shuttled between infirmaries and psychiatric wards. Army doctors saw something deeply wrong with him. They diagnosed him with depression, nervous breakdowns, mental imbalances. They wrote reports stating he was a dangerous pathological personality. At one point, a commanding officer initiated proceedings to have him court-martialed for stealing army blankets. But Petiot was already a master of the system. He learned to mimic the symptoms of shell shock. He played the part of the broken soldier so convincingly that instead of a court-martial, he was sent to another hospital. In the end, he was discharged with a full disability pension. He had successfully manipulated military psychiatry to his own advantage. He left the war not as a troubled misfit, but officially recognized as a wounded hero, a man whose mind had been scarred by the horrors of combat. It was the perfect cover story, and one he would use for the rest of his life. With his status as a war veteran, he gained entry into medical school. The field of medicine, a profession dedicated to preserving life, attracted this man who was obsessed with death. He was a brilliant and dedicated student, completing an accelerated 8-month course. In 1921, Marcel Petiot became a fully qualified doctor. He set up his first practice in the small town of Villeneuve-sur-Yonne, and here in this microcosm of French society, he perfected his double life. To the public, he was a godsend. He was the young, charismatic doctor from Paris. He was known for his modern techniques. He made house calls at all hours. Crucially, he offered free medical care to the poor and destitute. This single act of calculated charity earned him the unwavering loyalty of the town's working class. He wasn't just their doctor, he was their champion. His popularity soared. He was a pillar of the community, a man everyone looked up to, and with that popularity came power. In 1926, riding a wave of public adoration, he ran for mayor, and he won. Dr. Mayor Marcel Petiot. He was the most powerful man in town, but beneath this shining surface, the darkness was spreading. Behind the closed doors of his clinic, things were not what they seemed. Rumors began to circulate. It was whispered that the good doctor was a little too quick to prescribe powerful addictive narcotics like morphine and heroin. He was building a client base of addicts who depended on him. There were financial irregularities. He was accused of submitting false claims for medical treatments that never happened, stealing money from the state. He was even caught stealing electricity for his home by rigging the town's power lines. Then came the disappearances and mysterious deaths. A young woman, Louise Delavaux, the daughter of one of Petiot's elderly patients, was known to be having an affair with the mayor. In 1926, she vanished. Petiot was the last person to see her. He claimed she had run away with a new lover. Her body was never found. A few years later, one of his political rivals died suddenly after a heated argument with Petiot. The whispers grew louder, but who could prove anything? He was the mayor. He was the town doctor. He controlled the police reports, the death certificates. He would smile his reassuring smile, offer his condolences, and the rumors would remain just that, rumors. An investigation was opened into the woman's disappearance, but it was quickly shut down. Petiot himself helped direct it, steering it into one dead end after another. Eventually, even his carefully constructed reputation in Villeneuve-sur-Yonne began to crumble under the weight of his own corruption. He was accused of fraud, of theft, of everything from minor swindles to major crimes. He needed a new, larger pond where his past couldn't follow him so easily. In the early 1930s, he moved to Paris. It was the perfect move for a man like him. In the anonymity of the vast, bustling city, he could reinvent himself. He established a new, highly successful medical practice at 66 Rue de Caumartin. His reputation for brilliance followed him. His waiting room was always packed with patients, from working-class laborers to wealthy socialites. He was known for his uncanny diagnostic skills, for his professional and caring bedside manner. Think of the sheer audacity. This man, with a long and documented history of theft, corruption, violent tendencies, and at least one highly suspicious disappearance, was able to effortlessly integrate himself into the highest levels of Parisian society. He became a trusted physician, a man people would confide in, a man they would trust with their lives and the lives of their children. He had spent over 20 years perfecting his mask, the mask of the war hero, the mask of the charitable doctor, the mask of the respectable citizen. He understood a fundamental truth about human nature. People see what they want to see, and everyone wanted to see the good doctor. And then, in 1940, the Nazis came. The fabric of French society was torn apart. The city was plunged into a new era of fear and uncertainty. For most, the occupation was a nightmare. For Marcel Petiot, it was a dream come true. The chaos was a perfect storm, a perfect camouflage for a predator. The system of law and order he had spent his life manipulating had now collapsed entirely. In a city where people vanished every day, where desperation was the common currency, Petiot saw his ultimate opportunity. He was a man without empathy, without a conscience, living in a time when those very qualities could be fatal. He saw the fear in the eyes of his fellow citizens, and he didn't see a tragedy. He saw a business opportunity. The respected doctor, the friendly face, the pillar of the community, was about to leverage 2 decades of carefully cultivated trust to become one of history's most prolific and terrifying serial killers. In 1941, he purchased the townhouse at 21 Rue Le Sueur. The stage was set. The perfect trap was about to be laid. The perfect predator does not hunt with claws and teeth. He hunts with promises. He builds a trap not of steel and wire, but of hope. This was the dark art of Marcel Petiot. He didn't just kill people. He first seduced them into believing he was their only salvation. His scheme was a masterpiece of psychological warfare, born from the unique terror of occupied Paris. He created a myth, a whisper of a way out. He called his imaginary organization Fly Talks, a name plucked from a popular brand of insecticide, a sick private joke for a man who viewed his victims as nothing more than vermin to be exterminated. The myth worked like this: if you were in danger, if you were a Jewish person hiding from the Gestapo, a resistance fighter on the run, or even a wealthy collaborator who now feared the war was turning against Germany, there was a man who could help. A certain Dr. Eugene, one of Petiot's many aliases, ran a secret, foolproof escape route. He could smuggle you out of France, through Portugal or Spain, and all the way to the safety of Argentina. A new life awaited. This rumor was not spread by Petiot himself. That would be too risky. Instead, he used a network of intermediaries, people he called raboteurs, or beaters, like in a hunt. These were taxi drivers, hairdressers, small-time criminals, and even some legitimate resistance members. Most of them had no idea of the true, horrifying nature of the network. They believed they were helping people escape. They would identify desperate families, make the initial contact, and for a small commission, they would pass them on to the brilliant Dr. Eugene. Imagine you are that desperate person. Your world has shrunk to the four walls of a hidden room. Every footstep in the hallway, every shout in the street could be the end. Then, a trusted friend brings you this incredible news. There is a way out. You are arranged a meeting with Dr. Eugene. You meet him in a discreet location, a quiet cafe or a park bench. He is not what you expect. He isn't a shadowy figure from a spy novel. He is a professional, a doctor. He is articulate, intelligent, and radiates an aura of calm competence. He speaks with authority about the route, about the officials he has bribed, about the boat that is waiting. He understands your fear. He reassures you. In a world of chaos, he is a figure of absolute certainty. He is the answer to your prayers. Of course, this journey to freedom comes at a price. The fee is 25,000 francs per person. For a family of 4, that is 100,000 francs, a staggering sum. But he is not just asking for cash. He gives you specific instructions. Liquidate all your assets. Gather everything of value you own. Gold coins, diamonds, jewelry, valuable artwork, stocks, and bonds. You will need all of it. He explains, to establish yourself in your new life in Argentina. It's a plausible, even logical instruction. He also tells you to pack your 2 largest and best suitcases with your finest clothes and most cherished personal belongings. He then lays down a set of strict, non-negotiable rules, all under the guise of security. You must tell absolutely no one about your plans, not your parents, not your siblings, not your closest friends. The Gestapo has ears everywhere, he would say. One loose word, and the entire network is compromised, not just for you, but for everyone. This isolation was the first step in the trap. It cut the victims off from anyone who might question the plan or notice they were gone. He had another chillingly clever instruction. He would tell his clients to write letters to their remaining family, but to post-date them for several months in the future. In these letters, they were to describe their safe arrival and their wonderful new life in South America. He would promise to have these letters smuggled out of the country and posted from abroad. It was a brilliant touch. The families would receive these letters months later, long after their loved ones were dead, and would be reassured that everything was fine. It bought Petiot months, even years, of time before anyone would even think to start looking for the missing people. The final requirement, he would explain, was a medical one. As a doctor, he was uniquely positioned to make this sound official. The Argentinian authorities, he'd say, are very strict about public health. To be granted entry, you must be inoculated against various tropical diseases. It was a mandatory part of the immigration process. Luckily for them, he could administer the necessary vaccination himself right before their departure. It would save them time and avoid any risky visits to other clinics. He would give you the date and the address for your departure, 21 Rue Le Sueur. He would instruct you to arrive late at night, when the streets were empty and the curfew was in effect. You were to bring everything: the cash, the jewels, the suitcases. This was the final rendezvous, the night you would leave the nightmare of France behind forever. On that fateful night, you arrive at the dark, silent townhouse. The street is empty. You knock softly. The door is opened by the doctor himself. He greets you with a warm, reassuring smile and quickly ushers you inside. The house is dark and quiet. The heavy curtains are drawn, muffling all sound from the outside world. He leads you not into a comfortable living room, but to a small, strangely shaped triangular room at the back of the house. He tells you this is a private consulting room, a place where he can administer the injection in sterile conditions. The room feels strange. There are no windows. The walls seem unusually thick, soundproof. He tells you to make yourself comfortable. He just needs a moment to prepare the vaccine. You sit in the oppressive silence, your suitcases on the floor beside you, filled with all your worldly possessions and all your hopes for the future. Your heart is pounding, a frantic mix of anxiety and overwhelming relief. You made it. You are safe. Dr. Petiot returns. In his hand is a medical syringe filled with a clear liquid. Just a small prick, he says soothingly. Roll up your sleeve. You do as you're told. You trust him. He is your savior. He administers the injection into your arm. It's quick and almost painless. Now, he says, his voice calm and professional, just rest here for a few minutes. The vaccine can sometimes cause a little dizziness. I will be back shortly to take you to the car that will begin your journey. He gives you another one of his reassuring smiles, steps out of the room, and closes the heavy door behind him. You hear a loud click, the sound of a bolt sliding into place. You wait. A minute passes, then 2. You start to feel strange. It's not dizziness. It's a spreading numbness, a cold weakness creeping through your limbs. Your vision begins to blur at the edges. A cold knot of terror begins to form in your stomach. This isn't a vaccine. Something is terribly, horribly wrong. You stumble to your feet, your legs barely supporting you. You push against the door, it doesn't budge. It's locked from the outside. You bang on it, your fists feeling heavy and useless. You shout the doctor's name. Your voice sounds weak, muffled by the soundproof walls. There is no answer. In a state of pure panic, your eyes dart around the room, this windowless prison. And then you see it, a tiny, almost imperceptible detail you had missed before. A small hole drilled through the wall at eye level, a peephole. And in that final, horrifying moment of clarity, you understand the truth. The doctor is on the other side of that wall. He is watching you. He is watching you die. There was no escape network. There was no boat to Argentina. There was no new life. There was only this room, this purpose-built death chamber. The entire elaborate story was a lie, a spider's web woven to lure you here, to this exact spot, stripped of all your wealth and cut off from everyone you ever knew. This was Petiot's ritual. He didn't just kill, he observed. He watched through his peephole as the poison did its work, as his victims collapsed in agony, their last moments filled with the devastating betrayal of a man they believed was their savior. For Petiot, this was the ultimate expression of power. Once they were dead, the second part of his work began. He would drag the body down to his custom-designed basement workshop. With the detached precision of a surgeon, he would dismember the corpse. He would obliterate their identities, burning their papers and destroying their faces. Then he would dispose of the pieces, either by dissolving them in the quicklime pit or by burning them, bit by bit, in his furnace. For 3 years, this factory of death ran in the heart of Paris. He was methodical, patient, and prolific. The war was the perfect cover. The chaos was his accomplice. He turned human hope into fuel for his furnace, and no one was the wiser, until he made one small, careless mistake. He let his fire burn too hot, for too long. And the smoke, the foul, stinking smoke, finally revealed his secret world to the light. The spider had fled his web. In the chaotic days following the discovery at 21 Rue Le Sueur, as the city of Paris was celebrating its liberation from Nazi rule in August 1944, Dr. Marcel Petiot was nowhere to be found. He had become a ghost, the most wanted man in all of France. His name and face were plastered on the front page of every newspaper, alongside grotesque illustrations of the horrors found in his basement. The press, in a frenzy, had given him his immortal, terrifying nickname, Dr. Satan. The story of the House of Horrors had captured and revolted the public imagination. How could a man responsible for such atrocities simply disappear? He did what he had always done. He hid in plain sight. Petiot was a chameleon, a master of disguise and identity. He grew a thick beard and mustache, put on glasses, and adopted a new name. He moved from one clandestine apartment to another, and then, in an act of almost unbelievable audacity, he found the perfect cover. He joined the French forces of the Interior FFI, the organized ranks of the very resistance he had falsely claimed to be a part of. Under the alias of Captain Henri Valéry, he was put in charge of counter-espionage and interrogating prisoners. For weeks, the most wanted serial killer in France was officially hunting traitors and collaborators, sending men to their deaths, all while wearing the uniform of a national hero. The irony was as grotesque as his crimes. He was hiding from the law by becoming the law. But his luck was running out. His face was too famous, his story too sensational. The police were closing in, following a trail of clues he had carelessly left behind. Finally, on October 31st, 1944, he was recognized by an officer at a Paris metro station. The manhunt, which had lasted 7 long months, was over. Captain Valéry was unmasked. Dr. Satan was in chains. The trial of Marcel Petiot began on March 18, 1946. It was more than just a murder trial. It was a national spectacle. A post-war France, grappling with the trauma of occupation and collaboration, was desperate for a clear-cut villain. Petiot was the perfect candidate. Crowds lined up for hours every day, fighting for a seat in the public gallery of the Palais de Justice. They wanted to see the monster with their own eyes. Petiot, however, had no intention of playing the part of a cowering villain. He entered the courtroom not with shame, but with an air of theatrical arrogance. He was immaculately dressed, smiling and waving to the reporters and the crowds. He was the star of the show, and he was ready to give the performance of his life. His defense strategy was as bold as it was insane. He stuck to the same story he had told the police on the day of his arrest. He was not a serial killer, he proclaimed from the witness stand. He was a patriot, a silent hero of the resistance. He claimed that his organization, Fly Talks, was a real top-secret assassination squad dedicated to eliminating enemies of the French people. The men and women whose remains were found in his home were not, he insisted, innocent victims. With a chilling lack of emotion, he described them all as Gestapo agents, German officers, and vile French collaborators who had sold their country to the Nazis. He hadn't murdered them. He had executed them. "I am a killer, but I'm not an assassin," he once famously declared, drawing a bizarre line between his actions and common murder. He presented a list of 63 names to the court, people he claimed to have killed for the resistance. He spoke with such confidence, such intricate detail, that for a moment he sowed seeds of doubt. France in 1946 was a fractured country. The line between a resistance hero and a war criminal could sometimes be blurry. Petiot exploited this ambiguity with surgical precision. But the state prosecutor, Charles Dupin, was ready. He began to systematically dismantle Petiot's fantasy, piece by horrifying piece. The first most damning evidence was the mountain of suitcases brought into the courtroom. The prosecution opened them one by one, displaying the contents for the jury and the gallery to see. A child's teddy bear, a woman's silk dress, a family photo album filled with smiling faces, a set of religious texts. These were not the belongings of hardened Nazi spies. They were the last remnants of ordinary people, of families who had dreamt of a new life. Then came the witnesses. Heartbroken relatives of the missing took the stand. A tearful mother described selling her last piece of family jewelry to pay for her son's escape with Dr. Petiot. A man recounted how his brother, a Jewish tailor, had entrusted his entire life savings to the doctor. Their stories, filled with genuine grief and loss, painted a devastating picture of Petiot's cold-blooded deception. The prosecution also presented a mountain of financial evidence. They had tracked down the second-hand dealers, the tailors, the jewelers, to whom Petiot had sold his victim's property. They showed how he had profited from every watch, every fur coat, every stolen suit. This wasn't the work of a patriot fighting for a cause. This was the work of a greedy common thief who killed for profit. Throughout the trial, Petiot remained defiant. He was a combative and disruptive presence in the courtroom. He would leap to his feet screaming insults at the prosecutor, the judges, and the witnesses. He called the victims' families scum and their testimony lies. He seemed to revel in the attention. his ego inflated by the media spotlight. When the prosecutor confronted him with the list of the 27 identified victims from the house, Petiot interrupted with a contemptuous sneer. "This list is not complete. I was much more successful than that." It was a moment of pure, unadulterated evil, a glimpse behind the mask. He played to the gallery, portraying himself as a scapegoat, a hero being punished by a system that couldn't understand the harsh necessities of war. But the jury saw through the performance. The evidence was simply too vast, too damning. The sheer scale of the butchery, the calculated cruelty of his methods, and his obvious greed pointed to only one conclusion. On April 4th, 1946, after a trial that had gripped the nation for over 2 weeks, the jury delivered its verdict. Marcel Petiot was found guilty of 26 counts of murder. He heard the verdict without flinching. When the judge sentenced him to death by the guillotine, he showed no remorse, no fear, only a quiet, arrogant defiance. In the early morning hours of May 25, 1946, Marcel Petiot was taken to the courtyard of La Santé prison for his execution. Even in his final moments, his dark theatricality did not desert him. As he was being prepared, he turned to his lawyer and said with a smirk, "Gentlemen, I ask you not to look. It will not be a pretty sight." His death brought an end to his reign of terror, but it did not answer all the questions. The true number of his victims remains a mystery. He was convicted of 26 murders, but he claimed to have killed 63. The police found the belongings of many more. Did he kill 100 people? 150? We will likely never know. He was so efficient at erasing his victims that he nearly erased the memory of their existence as well. The story of Marcel Petiot is more than just a tale of a serial killer. It's a chilling lesson in the nature of evil. It shows us that monsters rarely appear with horns and claws. They often come to us with a reassuring smile, offering a helping hand. They thrive in times of chaos and fear, turning our deepest hopes into their most deadly weapons. The house at 21 Rue Le Sueur no longer stands, but its dark legacy is the permanent stain on the history of Paris. A timeless warning that the most terrifying darkness can often be found hiding behind the most respectable of masks. Do you think he was a product of the chaos of war, or would he have become a monster even in peaceful times? Thank you for watching until the end. Share your final thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss other dark stories we investigate together.